Every day, another viral clip surfaces. A woman crying in her car because her schedule fell apart. Another overwhelmed by a repair she doesn't know how to handle. Another stuck between bills she can't manage. And while the internet comforts them, something far more important goes unnoticed. These emotional crashes have become a cultural norm, not an exception. They're symptoms of a deeper conditioning, one that leaves people unprepared for the very reality they say they want independence from. The question is not, why is life so hard? The real question is, why were so many taught to expect it to be easy? And once you understand the answer, everything else makes sense. You've seen these moments before. A woman sitting in her car with her phone propped up on the dashboard, tears streaming down her face because the daycare called again. Or she's overwhelmed because the grocery bill is higher this week, and she's not sure which expense she can push to next month. Sometimes it's the flat tire she doesn't know how to handle, or the landlord ignoring her messages while a minor repair feels like a looming catastrophe. None of these situations are extraordinary, yet they trigger breakdowns that look like the world is ending. What's happening in these moments isn't tragedy, it's overload. When someone hasn't built the internal structure to separate inconvenience from crisis, every inconvenience becomes a crisis. A sick child isn't just a sick child, it becomes a symbol of being alone. A repair bill isn't just a repair bill, it's proof that life is unfair. A flat tire isn't a flat tire, it's the emotional confirmation that she can't handle her own life. These reactions have nothing to do with life being unbearably hard. Billions of people face the same responsibilities every day without broadcasting collapse. The real issue is the widening gap between expectation and capability. Many women were told adulthood would feel empowering, expressive, intuitive, and that support would always arrive when they needed it. Real life doesn't operate like that. It doesn't adjust itself to match how overwhelmed someone feels. When small responsibilities repeatedly push someone past their emotional threshold, it's not because the responsibilities are too heavy. It's because the internal foundation required to carry them was never built. Collapse doesn't start with a major disaster. It starts with the inability to handle the ordinary. Some women don't walk into chaos, they choose it, convinced it will feel like freedom. They leave a stable relationship, a reliable man, or a structured life because they believe independence will be effortless, glamorous, and emotionally liberating. The idea sounds empowering. No rules, no compromises, no accountability, just finding yourself. But that vision isn't rooted in reality. It's rooted in emotion, brief, intoxicating, and dangerously misleading. Social media feeds this illusion. It sells the fantasy that independence is a lifestyle aesthetic, morning coffee photos, spontaneous trips, motivational quotes about reclaiming your power. None of it shows the real cost, the rent, the workload, the logistics, the nights when the kids are sick and you're the only adult in the house, the pressure that doesn't care how you feel or what affirmation you posted that morning. Freedom built on emotion instead of structure always collapses because it wasn't freedom, it was escape. And escape feels good only until reality catches up. When the responsibilities they once shared double in weight, when the emotional labor they never noticed suddenly belongs entirely to them, the fantasy dissolves. The same women who said they didn't need support often find themselves drowning in tasks that used to feel invisible. This isn't about men being perfect or women being incapable. It's about misunderstanding what independence requires. Real independence demands discipline, planning, resilience, and emotional steadiness. Without those, freedom doesn't lead upward. It spirals. What looked like liberation turns into disorganization, exhaustion, and panic. Independence without structure isn't empowerment. It's chaos wearing a filter. Reality always arrives quietly. It doesn't knock. It doesn't warn. It simply shows up in the form of everyday responsibilities that used to be shared, handled, or absorbed by someone else. Suddenly, the life that once felt restrictive reveals itself as the very structure that kept everything functioning. And without it, even simple tasks begin to feel impossible. The daily obligations hit hardest: coordinating school drop-offs while juggling work emails, managing repairs with contractors who don't return calls, handling paperwork, scheduling appointments, keeping the household running when everyone is tired, hungry, or sick. These are the parts of life that demand consistency, clarity, and calm under pressure. When those qualities aren't developed, the smallest disruption becomes a crisis. There's also the mental load, something many underestimate until they're carrying it alone. The decisions, the planning, the anticipation of problems before they happen. Without support, it turns into constant decision fatigue. The brain stops distinguishing between this is urgent and this is merely inconvenient. Everything blends together into one overwhelming blur. That's when emotional flooding happens. Logic shuts down, emotions spike, and minor issues feel catastrophic. This is the moment when many women realize something they never noticed before. A partner wasn't just helping with tasks. He was stabilizing the environment. He absorbed pressure. He managed crises. He created predictability. He handled logistics quietly, invisibly, reliably. And without that, life doesn't just get harder, it becomes relentless. Reality isn't cruel. It isn't punishing anyone. It simply expects adults to cope, plan, endure, and adapt. Those who were prepared step into that role. Those who weren't feel crushed by responsibilities that millions navigate every day. Reality doesn't discriminate. It only exposes who was ready and who wasn't. There's a difference between feeling overwhelmed and performing overwhelm, and today that line has almost disappeared. A growing number of women have learned that the fastest way to gain attention, validation, and emotional rescue is to document their distress, not process it, not solve it, record it. A crying video in the car, a trembling voice describing how hard everything is, a shaky clip confessing that they can't do this anymore. The camera becomes a stage, and the breakdown becomes a performance, one crafted to trigger sympathy, reassurance, and an audience willing to affirm every emotion as truth. This behavior didn't appear out of nowhere. It was taught, rewarded, reinforced. Each time someone posts a meltdown and receives thousands of comments cheering her on, telling her she's brave, telling her she's strong for falling apart publicly, the script deepens. Struggle becomes currency. Vulnerability becomes content. Emotional instability becomes a brand. But here's the psychological trap. What gets rewarded gets repeated. When public breakdowns generate more support than private problem solving, the mind unconsciously chooses the easier path. It becomes more appealing to broadcast pain than to confront it, more comforting to receive digital sympathy than to build real resilience. The tragedy is that none of this actually fixes anything. The bills remain unpaid. The kids still need structure. The responsibilities don't shrink just because someone cried into a camera. What changes is the mindset, the belief that showing distress is enough, that external validation is a substitute for internal strength. Turning struggle into a performance doesn't lighten the load. It just postpones the moment when reality demands action, and reality always demands action. There's a form of stability many people never notice until it disappears. It isn't romantic, glamorous, or loud. It's the quiet, consistent structure men provide. The kind that keeps a household functioning even when no one is paying attention. And when that structure is removed, the cracks show instantly. Men bring predictability, not because they're perfect, but because they operate through routine, logic, and problem solving. They're the ones who handle the tasks no one celebrates, setting boundaries for the kids, enforcing rules, staying calm during emergencies, lifting the heavy things, fixing what breaks, making decisions when emotions run high. This isn't just physical labor. It's emotional containment. It's psychological grounding. When a man is present, chaos has less room to grow. Children know what to expect. The household has rhythm. Problems are addressed before they spiral. Stress is distributed instead of concentrated. Most men do these things so naturally that their work becomes invisible until the day it's gone. That's when reality shifts. Without that stabilizing force, the home becomes reactive instead of organized. Bedtimes slip. Rules turn into suggestions. Minor inconveniences escalate into drama. Small tasks exhaust the entire system. The emotional climate becomes volatile, not because women are incapable, but because they were never taught how to create structure on their own. Society conditioned them to express, not to stabilize. The absence of male structure doesn't just create disorder, it exposes the hidden weight men carried all along. And once it's gone, no amount of empowerment slogans or independence rhetoric can replace it. Stability isn't a feeling, it's a skill set. And when the person who held that skill set leaves, the difference isn't subtle. It's a shockwave. When life begins to unravel, the first instinct for many people is to look outward, not inward. And for a growing number of women, this instinct turns into a pattern, a consistent refusal to acknowledge their role in the outcomes they're facing. Instead of asking, what part of this do I need to fix? The mind defaults to, who failed me this time? The target shifts depending on the day. An ex-partner who doesn't help enough, a job that doesn't pay what it should, a childcare system that expects too much, a family that doesn't show up, an economy that won't give them a break. The list is endless because the emotion isn't rooted in circumstance, it's rooted in avoidance. Taking responsibility hurts. It requires looking directly at choices, habits, and behaviors that contributed to the collapse. It demands emotional maturity, an ability to confront discomfort without deflecting it. And maturity is a muscle that weakens when it's never exercised. This is why ownership has become so rare. Many women were raised to believe their feelings are the truth, their intentions outweigh their actions, and their struggles justify their reactions. In that framework, responsibility feels like an attack rather than an opportunity. Accountability becomes an insult instead of a path forward. But here's the cost. When someone refuses responsibility, someone else must absorb it. And men often become the default carriers, stepping in to solve crises they didn't create, manage chaos they didn't cause, or stabilize situations that were entirely preventable. It's not partnership. It's emotional outsourcing. A life built on blame will always collapse. Not because others won't help, but because no one can hold responsibility on behalf of someone who refuses to hold it themselves. The collapse of one adult doesn't stay contained. It spreads. And the first place it lands is on the children. Quietly, consistently, and long before anyone notices the damage. Kids may not understand adult stress, but they feel it. They absorb it. They reorganize their entire emotional world around it. When a home lacks structure, children lose their sense of safety. Bedtimes drift, boundaries blur, rules depend on the mood of the day. What should be predictable becomes unstable, and instability is the fastest way to trigger anxiety in a developing mind. A child needs to know what comes next. When they don't, they carry tension in their bodies the same way adults carry debt, increasing over time, unavoidable, impossible to ignore. And when a mother is overwhelmed, the child often becomes the emotional caretaker. You see it in the oldest sibling stepping into the role of another parent, in the little boy who comforts his mother instead of playing outside, in the little girl who learns to read someone's tone before she learns to read a book. These are not milestones, these are warnings. The presence of rotating male figures only deepens the confusion. Kids don't know who they're supposed to trust, who they're supposed to listen to, or whose authority matters. The instability becomes part of their identity, and in therapy rooms all over the country, these kids grow into teenagers who carry resentment, guilt, hyper-independence, or emotional numbness, symptoms of being forced to function beyond their age. This is the generational cost no one wants to talk about. A woman's collapse isn't just her own. It creates a ripple effect that shapes the emotional blueprint of the next generation. Children don't become resilient by watching chaos. They become anxious, reactive, and unsure of their place in the world. Chaos doesn't just break adults. It raises broken children. Men don't announce their withdrawal. They don't make dramatic speeches about giving up, and they don't record teary videos explaining why they're done investing in dysfunctional dynamics. They simply step back, quietly, predictably, and once they do, they rarely return. A growing number of men are opting out, not because they fear commitment, but because they fear becoming someone's emotional life raft. They've watched too many situations unfold the same way. A woman insists she's independent, collapses under routine responsibilities, and then turns to the nearest man as her safety net, expecting him to absorb the fallout she created, not as a partner, but as a utility. Men are paying attention. They see patterns. They watch the breakdowns over minor inconveniences, the blame placed on everyone else, the chaos disguised as strength, the cycles of instability that repeat with each new relationship. They know exactly what it means when someone is overwhelmed by life before a partnership even begins, and they're learning to protect themselves early. So they screen. They observe how a woman handles pressure, how she organizes her life, how she reacts to stress, how she manages her emotions, how she speaks about her past. They avoid the ones who treat them like a future cleanup crew. They distance themselves from situations where their effort won't be reciprocated, where their stability will be consumed rather than appreciated. This withdrawal isn't spiteful. It's strategic. When a man has spent years carrying unbalanced responsibility in relationships, in workplaces, in families, he eventually recognizes the cost. And once he sees that cost clearly, he refuses to repeat it. As men step back, the dating landscape shifts. The women who collapse under daily life now struggle to find partners willing to enter that chaos. The market becomes harsher, not because men became cold, but because they finally learned to choose self-preservation. Not every woman collapses when life gets heavy. There is a quieter group, the ones who rise. You don't see them posting messy breakdowns online or turning their hardships into public spectacles. They don't claim to be perfect, and they don't pretend life is easy. They simply handle reality with a level of discipline and emotional steadiness that sets them apart. Their strength isn't loud, it's intentional. These women understand that adulthood doesn't reward feelings, it rewards consistency. They plan, they budget, they create routines that keep chaos away. They regulate their emotions without expecting the world to pause and comfort them. They hold themselves accountable when things go wrong, and instead of asking who should fix the problem, they ask how to fix it. Their relationships reflect this mindset. They don't chase dopamine or romantic fantasy. They choose partners based on character, stability, and long-term alignment. They understand the value of structure because they've built it themselves. They contribute rather than consume. They look for reciprocity, not rescue. What makes them rare isn't capability, it's conditioning. Society doesn't reward their mindset. It doesn't hand out sympathy for self-discipline. It doesn't shower praise on quiet competence. Instead, it amplifies drama, encourages emotional overexposure, and normalizes irresponsibility. The women who rise don't fit that script, so they get less attention, but far more respect. And here's the truth. These women stand out instantly to men. They move differently, think differently. Their presence brings calm instead of chaos. Their lives have order, not turmoil. And because they've built real resilience, they can genuinely partner with a man instead of leaning on him to compensate for their instability. They are the exception in a culture that glorifies dysfunction. And that's exactly why men value them. There's a point where clarity becomes non-negotiable for men. When you've watched enough relationships fall apart under the weight of emotional volatility, poor decision-making, and constant blame shifting, you start noticing patterns long before they fully unfold. And once those patterns become visible, ignoring them isn't compassion, it's self-sabotage. Certain behaviors reveal everything you need to know. Pay attention to how a woman responds to minor stress. If a small inconvenience triggers panic, tears, or dramatic storytelling, it's a preview of how she'll react when life delivers something bigger. Notice whether she takes responsibility for her choices or immediately looks for someone to blame. If every problem is someone else's fault, you'll eventually become the next name on that list. Watch her habits. Is her life organized or chaotic? Does she follow through on plans? Does she manage her time, her money, and her commitments? Or does she constantly scramble, complain, and expect others to fill in the gaps? Chaos in the everyday always becomes chaos in the relationship. Pay attention to how she talks about past relationships. If every ex was toxic, every friend betrayed her, every workplace mistreats her, there's only one consistent variable, and it's not the world. Above all, observe whether she seeks solutions or sympathy. One path leads to resilience. The other leads to collapse. Men aren't meant to be saviors. They aren't emotional shock absorbers or walking stability machines. A relationship is a partnership, not a rescue mission. When you choose someone who constantly destabilizes herself, you're signing up to be the person who absorbs the fallout. Not every woman collapses, but the women who do share unmistakable signs. The sooner you recognize them, the sooner you can protect your energy, your stability, and your future. Choose with clarity. Choose with foresight. Choose a life that doesn't demand your destruction. In the end, the pattern is unmistakable. The problem isn't that life has suddenly become harsher or more demanding. Life has always required discipline, endurance, and emotional steadiness. What changed is the conditioning. A generation was taught to prioritize expression over resilience, validation over responsibility, and comfort over preparation. And when those lessons collide with the realities of adulthood, collapse becomes inevitable. But collapse isn't destiny. It's a consequence. One that can be prevented, but never avoided through denial. Every day, people choose who they become through the habits they build, the standards they hold, and the accountability they accept. Some choose growth. Others choose blame. Some develop strength that carries them through difficulty. Others demand sympathy and call it empowerment. The outcomes speak for themselves. For men watching this, understand something clearly. You don't have to carry someone else's instability. You don't have to clean up chaos you didn't create. You don't have to trade your peace for someone's unresolved patterns. Your role in a relationship is partnership, not sacrifice of identity, purpose, or sanity. Protect your boundaries. Protect your judgment. Protect the structure you built for yourself. Clarity isn't cold. It's survival. And for the women who hear this without defensiveness, the path forward is wide open. Accountability isn't punishment. It's liberation. When you stop outsourcing blame, you reclaim power. When you stop turning struggle into performance, you start building real strength. When you take ownership of your choices, life becomes manageable, not overwhelming. Growth begins the moment you stop negotiating with reality. Because reality doesn't bend. It doesn't pause, soften, or make exceptions. It will not adjust itself to match anyone's emotional state. It demands competence. It rewards stability. And it punishes denial every single time. You adapt, or you collapse. That truth has no bias. It applies to everyone. If you've seen these patterns in your own life, or watched someone fall apart under the weight of responsibilities they never prepared for, share your experience below. Conversations like these can't stay silent anymore. They help men make better decisions. They help women see themselves clearly. And they expose the uncomfortable truths modern culture keeps trying to avoid. If this message hits something real for you, take a moment now. Like, subscribe. Share it with someone who needs to hear it, and leave your story in the comments. Your voice adds clarity to a conversation that's long overdue.